Call the June 2018 meeting to order. This particular time, I see no individuals here from the general public, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is the approval of minutes of our prior meeting. We've all had the opportunity to review those. Are there any additions and or corrections? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion for their approval and a second.
Second.
Motion, have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Item number 4, the approval of the vouchers. Again, we've all had the opportunity through our board packet to review the vouchers. Any additions, questions, corrections? I need a motion and second for their approval.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign. Mr. Fagan,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
monthly reports.
Monthly report, revenue and expense summary for April 2018. Electric department had a net income of $286,000. The water department had a net income of $5,900. Been a really good year for the electric department. We're $1.3 million ahead of the forecast, obviously due to the extreme winter weather. Water department is dead on the forecast as of right now, and we'll talk about that a little more when we get into the budget. But overall, good month for both departments. Everything's looking good. I can go into more detail if you want it, but if not, I won't. So.
Dudley, you told me this before, but if you look down at water and sewer in December, can you tell me why that on the income before, I guess that's capital contribution, the 93,000 number? Brian Hatmaker had asked me why that was sort of offline, and you had told me before, but I didn't write it down and I forgot.
Well, the income before capital contribution is your sales are down and your expenses are up. So you didn't have any capital contributions there in that month that made that up. But really, it's just your sales were down so much.
And is that normal?
And your expenses were.
Is that
were
pretty
up.
much to
That
be
happens
expected in December?
That happens a lot in
Okay.
December, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Not, I need a motion and second for the approval of the monthly reports for April.
I make that motion. Second.
Have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by like sign? I'm sure Zach's not opposed to that. Project status reports. All right, how about there, Mr. Bowles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Project status reports. It looks like we have nothing going on from that report, but we actually have a ton of things going on. These are just the 2 major projects we've been tracking that complete our capital budget for the current year that we did get wrapped up and completed on time, and I have every expectation that they will also close within our estimated amount. We've got, of course, 2 projects for your approval later on on the agenda, and that will give us 2 new major projects to be working on with our forces. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions? Not, let's move on to item number 7. It's the approval of purchase orders.
I'm sorry,
No, that's not right.
water
My
and
bad.
sewer.
Yeah, my bad. Water and
That's
sewer
okay.
project status, my bad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm trying
can
to
make
get Penny out of
it,
here.
I can make it very easy. That's, we're still working on these projects that are on schedule and, within budget, so everything's fine.
Any other questions?
Stop. This is not
Let's-
all about me.
Let's move on to item number 7 then. And item number 7 is the wire quotations, and I'm going to let Mr. Bowles expound upon that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is some of our aerial cable. It's a system that we've been putting up now for going on 20 years. It's an extremely reliable system, and this is wire in connection with future projects for our stock. And because of the amount being over $50,000. We need to bring this to your attention. As you see, we've got some bids, and we cherry-picked within those bids in order to even save an additional $449 and a few pennies for our ratepayers. So we're recommending the award of the two purchase orders as shown, and the difference in delivery to go with Annixter of 2 weeks is not a factor in this particular case at all. It won't hurt us, so we'll just cash in that $449 and be happy.
Any questions, comments? If not, obviously, we need a motion and second for the approval of this purchase.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign. All right, let's move on to item number 8. And Mr. Bowles, we're going to allow you to keep the floor. We've got work order 680 as the first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, this is the first of two large projects that we have budgeted for our new capital budget. The preliminary was presented last month. Nothing has changed in regard to these projects. In fact, we were probably 80% finished with engineering at the time of last month. This first project that we're looking at, 680, is a complete rebuild of what's left of the city of Norris. As many of you know, this system was installed by TVA in the 1930s. It's been extremely reliable, but over the years we have been replacing it and upgrading it and modernizing it. And as a result of our efforts in doing this particular work, we'll be able to remove the second of two substations that are in the Norris area and run our system at a higher voltage, and what that translates to is improved system losses. Our system losses are already very low, but this will go to further improve the efficiency of our system. And it will obviously replace a lot of really old veteran plant that's in Norris. So I'd like your approval to proceed with this work order 680 as we have it engineered with an estimated cost including the contingency of over $80,000 with a total cost of $895,730.
Any questions, comments? We need an order. We need a motion and a second for approval of this work order.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, like sign. Let you keep the stump there, Ernie. Number 685, sir.
Yes. And then I'm going to pass the baton. This 685 is the second electric department work order on your agenda. This is the final phase of a major feeder rebuild that we've been doing in the Brownsville area. And this last missing link that is about 2 miles long will connect two sections that we have previously rebuilt. So it basically makes a continuous circuit that's been modernized all the way from Cofield to Rocky Top. And the existing line was built in the 1950s. So once again, we're not getting at it. You can't ever say we're getting at these too early, I don't believe. We're getting all we can out of them, but now's the time to move. So we're recommending that you allow us to proceed with work order 685. The total estimated amount after engineering at $484,198.
Are there any questions, additions, corrections, anything? If not, I need a motion and a second. Work order number 685, please.
Make a motion to approve work order 685.
Second. We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just say, if I could, before Dudley starts, as we look at these work orders, and you're looking at over $1 million in reconductoring. That's part of the strategy of what we do in all of our departments, is we look at a horizon. We've got a 5, a 10, and really a 20-year horizon on what we want to do and how we can best do that. The closer, the shorter time frame, the harder we focus on the particulars of what we do. But we do studies to go out and determine these lines, their losses, how hot they are. They sag down when they get hot, the load, the growth in the area that we do, and the reliability. So we constantly look at that. We've made contributions because it's in our long-term objective to replace all the galvanized lines within the city that we serve. And we do that in pieces. And this is done in pieces. We're looking at a capital budget that's over $6 million. And we try to see how can we best utilize and segregate funds to meet these individual goals, so we don't get caught in a year to where we've got $15-20 million worth of repairs to do because we failed to take bites out of it. We try not to take the whole thing. We try to take bites in all of these, and that's why you see Norris as phase 2. You see Briceville as phase 3, because what that says is we're taking bites over the years in order to keep our capital projects within a manageable budget and also make sure that we provide the highest level of service. I mean, you go out to Briceville and you have miles of line with few customers. So the return on this investment is non-existent. The return is quality of service that we provide these folks out there. And they get no less than the residents of Norris, and they get no less than the residents in Clinton and Oliver Springs or Rocky Top. Everybody's getting that. And the reason that they're up on the queue is because in the study, what we call power use study that we do as we look out, this is the area that we needed to direct our funds to. So you'll see a lot of phases all the time, and the reason that we do it in phases is so we don't have to take that big bite at one time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Insurance, we want to do insurance?
Yes, sir. The next is item number 9, the approval of property and casualty insurance.
Okay, this is our annual insurance. This is all our insurance for CUB. TVPPA Distributors Insurance Company designs these coverages specifically for utilities.
Dudley, can you make that just a little bit bigger up there? That'd be great for most of us.
Our manager has served on their board. He's chaired their board, and I think he just rolled off their board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So he spent a lot of years
Got an award.
helping them do the right thing. This other insurance proposal is quotes that Steve Pite went out and got us. Steve Pite is our agent, and he got these other quotes, but as you can see, they don't quite cover everything that the Distributors Insurance Company does. If you compare this year to last year, we're actually down $6,500, and that's because of this workers' comp. You see, it went from $212,000 last year to $194,000 this year, and that's because our experience mod is now 0.83, and last year it was 1.17. So the safety things have really come through for us, and we haven't had any claims, and that really saves you a lot of money when that happens. So we're recommending that we go with the TVPPA insurance of $546,952.
Any discussion in regards to the coverages, quotes, pricing, anything?
Gary, how's that? Do we go direct with them? I mean, I know Dudley said that Steve is our agent. Is he our agent for the TVPPA?
For
Yes.
DIC?
What we do is we want local representation. And Steve has been with us a long time. He would be our local rep if we went somewhere else. Although even if these numbers in this other column matched or even slightly above, I would still be recommending TV PPA because their unique coverage to utilities is different.
Sure.
You know, so, but Steve has a relationship with a lot of folks, and when we get, especially when we get in with some of these individuals that think that they need some type of special attention, he really does a great job in representing us to minimize the exposure out there. So this number obviously includes our total package, which includes that local representation.
Do we look at this annually, or is
Yes,
this a 2
we
or
do.
3-year thing? It's annual, okay.
We do.
It's an annual examination and repricing. Of course, this year, obviously, it helped us because of the fact that we had that reduction in the experience mod on work comp. That's a good savings there.
You know, you see boiler and machinery, you know, and the others don't do that. That's mostly Hartford does that. And that covers our transformers. That's $50 million. I mean, you get a, and in our area, not on our system, there have been transformers, and they're about $1 million. I mean, they'll launch like a missile, you know, and it is tremendously costly because you've got to bring in a temporary. TVA's got one on wheels. I forget how many thousands of dollars it is to rent that a day, and it takes about 1.5 years for these transformers to come in. That's why we have redundancy out in on all of our substations. So no one else, we can't get it other than through TV, PPA, or
through
DIC,
DIC.
that has a relationship, and we've worked to where replacement costs not even depreciated costs, because some of these transformers go back to the 50s easily.
And as a FYI piece here, every year that we have looked at this, and they do provide coverages that we don't find anyone else that wants to quote and even offer those coverages, and they've still been at a more favorable pricing through DIC every year that I've been on the board. And that's been
Every year I've been on their board, it's been that way, Gary.
So I asked this before, that if the board had insurance, like E&O
Yes.
insurance, is that under the public official / employee coverage, or is that a separate policy?
The public officials covers you for any liabilities that arise from this board. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm just saying, if we get sued as a board,
Yeah, that's,
It
if
comes
I get
under this.
named as an individual,
That's
I
it.
want to make sure that we've got coverage,
That's
because,
the $1 million last item
Gotcha.
listed on there.
thank you.
Yes, sir. It sure is. And I'm like you, because, you know, today's times, who knows?
Yes, and then we
Yeah.
have the umbrella policy on top of that.
Right.
Any other questions? Those are good questions and comments.
Are we sued often? Are we sued often?
No, we're threatened daily, though. That's the truth.
I feel like we have bullseyes on all of our vehicles
I
and
understand.
back of our shirts.
I don't know that we've ever lost a suit. I don't know that one comes to mind that we've ever lost. Because if we're at fault, we capitulate immediately. You know, we're not trying to hold anybody up. We try really hard to work with them, you know, but if we're right, then we don't. And they have tried, settle because it costs more. We don't do that. We don't do that. They tried to settle with a lady that we tried to help her with her car, and our guys pulled over on the side of the road. She crossed a double line to hit him, and she sues us, you say. And they wanted to settle because I think she only wanted like $5,000, and
Yeah.
we wouldn't do it because that puts a bullseye on us. Everyone can pick up a quick $5,000.
Right.
And we,
I just wondered how often
Thought that-
that really came through, that we really were.
not
so-
often, it doesn't.
Any other questions or comments? Then I'm entertaining a motion and second for the approval of our property and casualty insurance for the next year.
I make that motion?
I have a motion second.
And that's to go with TVPPA, correct?
That's correct. The
Yes.
recommendation,
Yep.
the 546,952 with, Distributors Insurance Company, which is a TVPPA, plan.
Captive, right.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Like sign. Let's move on to item number 10, that's approval of the budget for next year.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Down there, big guy?
I can get as deep as you want me to, or I'll be as brief as you want me to. I always like to start with the charts because you get a lot of information from the charts. Where the money comes from, electric department. Look at this nice little pie chart and you see half our revenue comes from residential. This big orange piece is our industrial and larger commercial. By larger commercial, that can include Food City, McDonald's, and places like that. The small general power is your Joe's Auto Shop and Market Street shops and Gary Cooper Insurance and places like that. So that's kind of the piece of where the money comes from. The next piece is where's the money go? Well, this great big chunk right here is TVA. So when you think about it, when we take in $1 worth of revenue, you know, we're getting about 25 cents to work with on that. So that's where the bulk of the money goes. We got about 14% in operating and maintenance expense. We got 5% in depreciation. And when you say, well, you're really not spending on depreciation, but we are spending on capital projects, which gets depreciated. So you could look at that different ways. And then you have 3.3% in taxes. So let's look at that. Let's look at some history. Number of customers. You know, you look at the number of customers. Since 2008, in the electric department, that's a pretty flat chart right there. We're really not growing any. You know, our operating revenues are weather-driven mainly, and they've kind of jumped around, and TVA's raised the rates, and we've passed those through. So our revenues have been fairly flat. This darker piece is other revenues, and the bulk of that is pole rental attachments, Comcast, what we charge Comcast and AT&T, you know. But also in that are late charges and things like that. If you look at our kilowatt hours sold, this kind of shows you how the weather has driven us some, and it also is the energy efficiency that we talk about some. You know, everybody's getting LED lights. Everybody's getting there's some people getting solar. Everybody's looking for ways to save, which affects us. Now let's look at power cost. I like to put that in red because that's money going out and that hurts. So you look at the power cost and you see we've held that relatively flat. And a lot of the reason we've held that flat is this VPP, and that's the virtual power plant we talk about every month, and that's something that's easy to take for granted, but we're the only ones that has that around here. We're the only ones that has that, far as I know, about anywhere. And we started that in 2011, and you look at how it's grown in 2017, that's $1.15 million. Without that, this red thing right here is that much taller, you know. So you take your sales less that red piece, and that gives you your margin. And your margin's what you use to pay your employees, to pay your bills, to pay for the capital projects. So we've held our margin pretty good over the years. That's important that we do that.
The 2011, Dudley, that's where we had, that's where we went right here into the margin, into the VPP, and that's also when we got the award.
Right. I'm going to show you that here in a second.
Okay.
So here's your margin, and you use that margin for your capital improvements. And right there in 2011, you got TVA award of $3.3 million. And we got that because of that virtual power plant and things that we could do with voltage reduction and things. So we've been, when you look at capital improvements, that's what we're spending every year on improving our system. Everybody doesn't do that, and that's what Greg was talking about. We're proactive, checking these lines, making these improvements, and that's why when you look at our system, it's in great shape. I always said the people that follow us got it made because they really are going to have a great system. And I wanted to show you how that impacted tax, which is a benefit to the city and the counties. You know, that's grown from 1.3 million to 2.159 million in that same period. You know,
And we pay the maximum, do we not,
we
Dudley?
pay the maximum allowed by law. And then the net income. Well, the net income kind of jumps around, but that's really not important as long as we can pay our people, pay for the projects, pay our debt. That's the important thing.
Dudley, before you get off of that, is the
Okay.
tax, go back to the blue right there, tax equivalent, is that taxes in, is that in lieu of tax money?
Yes, that's what we pay the
okay.
cities and the counties every year.
Okay.
All right, let's look at the water, kind of, and then we'll get it more into the specifics of each department. Water department, where the money comes from. Well, you got the blue pie and the green pie, which is really residential, water and sewer. And that, again, that's about half of what you got coming in. You got your industrial here, water and sewer. And when we speak of industrial and water and sewer, that's more your Ishans and your SLs and those big ones. The commercials are more your Food City and things. They're broke out a little different. And then you got 8% coming from ACWA treating their sewer. So where's the money go in the water department? Well, they don't have to pay TVA. That's a good thing. And that's probably why our rates are so low, because we don't have to pay anybody else. But most of the bulk of it goes to operation and maintenance. I mean, it's a big job Dan has keeping the system up and running and keeping us out of violation with the state and everyone else. And then you got a chunk of depreciation because we have so much plant out there. A big chunk of that, 22% of that's depreciation. And taxes here is payroll taxes, not city taxes. So you look at their number of customers. Again, pretty flat. Water's the blue, the gold, the sewer, pretty flat. Operating revenues. Well, the operating revenues have gone up, but the bulk of the reason of that is the industrial. The industrial has picked up for us. Capital improvements, Dan, just like the electric department, proactive, trying to stay ahead, change galvanized lines, keep the sewer pump stations going and all that. A lot of money going out on capital improvements. And our goal in the water and sewer department is to keep these numbers green. That keeps us to where we don't have to raise the rates. We keep the state happy. And we've been able to do that for a while. So
The deal there is we are in very good shape and we are debt free. So we don't have P&I going out. And our cash is very good in water and sewer. So we, as a staff, won't recommend increasing the rates because we don't have a justifiable reason to do that. However, you saw the depreciation almost at 25% of our expense. And that we have no control. We can't trim that, you see. And the state requires you to operate in the green. We can get into the red 1 year, but we got to get into the green the next day. We can get into the red again. 2 consecutive years, the state's going to look at that you want to raise the rates. We are going to we will not be recommending a rate increase in order to move us into the green until we have to. and we'll give you good justification for that. But with that, our expectation is, especially with our neighbors skyrocketing in their rates, for us to hold these rates, we'll be an anomaly anywhere with the rates that we charge and the level of service that we provide. It's not like we're skimping on operationally maintaining our system, or we devote a lot of time to make sure that we've got an operationally the highest grade of system in everything that we do. We've never received anything from the state. We've never been penalized. We've never had an order. And everyone around us has, and they're paying for it even today. So no debt, and our commitment over the years of having a top-rate maintained system has put us in a unique position because we have the cash to direct for anything strange that goes on, and we are then using all of our net income towards capital projects in order to keep our system up. But what'll get us in the end is depreciation, because as we improve and maintain and replace the capital projects, it's going to do nothing but raise the depreciation costs, which we have no control over.
Greg, how are we with our sewer pump stations? Are they in good shape? Do we need to be looking at or anticipating some
Yes.
capital projects?
We
soon?
do all the time. We have got on about 50, how many days do we have? Excuse me.
About 50.
About 50. Sewer is terrible because it's so corrosive, so it's not like you can fix it once and you're good to go, because it constantly deteriorates. I've seen manholes, heavy manholes that you can't pick up, turn into an Oreo cookie, because of the sulfuric acid that comes up. It erodes all of that away. So we're constantly working on, we had maybe 7 lift stations when I came here. And in order for us to serve all of the city and everyone where we're responsible, we've had to increase that. And it's tough. It's
We're
tough to
in
do.
good shape.
We're in excellent shape. We're in excellent shape because every year we're doing work on our pumps. Some are bigger. Miller Road, what was that? 475,000.
The Hitler bunker is.
The Hitler
referred to
bunker.
it
That's
at
right.
that time. That's
I mean,
about
I mean that.
$500,000.
We've got Miller Road. We've got the one stop down there. I mean, those are tremendously big. Cullum Street, but smaller ones too. And that.
You got $1 million in next year's capital budget just for wastewater pump station.
Right. And the odor. We have worked really hard. It costs money to keep the odor out of the city. And we've worked really, really hard. That was one of Dan's top priorities. Stop the bombs. And
Called ACU.
a lot of what we've done there is ACWA they used to send us what we call slugs, and they would come through and that would overwhelm us. But now we're trying to treat that upstream, so by the time it gets to us down here, it's not near as bad. But yes, we've got sufficient funds. We've got operationally we're doing great, and we're continuing to focus all the time a never-ending process on our pump stations. And $1 million for a small system, our size, normally that would be a deal breaker for many utilities. They'd be out borrowing money, but we're not.
Good.
Okay, so that's where we've been. Now where we going? On the electric department, the way we lay this out is we showed the 9 months ending through March. We got your estimated April through June. That's our projected total for 18. This is where we were last year, and this is what we're forecasting. We call it a budget, but for us, it's really a forecast. The weather controls us. We can't control that. So it's a forecast of what we project next year to be. We know TVA's going up on their rates. They know they're adding the grid access charge. We know that this year was kind of an odd year and extremely cold. So we normalize that, and it's our best guesstimate. We try to be somewhat conservative in our revenue projections, but our as far as our expenses, we try to be as accurate as we can. And this is the way the numbers roll out. So you can see we're showing a little bit of gain in revenue, mainly because of the rate increase, TVA's pass-through rate increase, not because we expect more sales. And our expenses, we're showing them up slightly, and a proposed net income of 2.4 million. I think that's conservative, but again, we've had years where it hadn't got cold and it hadn't got hot, and you know, and things. So we try to be conservative in that. So from there, we take our proposed net income, and we come over here to the next page, which is the funds, our funds. And you saw last month what Ernie proposed as capital outlay, and I can take you back to that. Remember this sheet from last month where he listed all his projects, and that came out to 6.22 million. And this is where we're at right now. This is our funds. This is what we estimate our funds to be at the end of this year, $3.6 million. We still have $2.9 million that we're going to draw down from that $7 million that we borrowed. So you add that in there. You add the net income I just showed you of $2.4 million, and you also add the depreciation in because you don't spend money for depreciation. So that gives you $13 million to work with, and you take the $6.2 million out that Ernie proposed for capital projects, and that puts you right about where we're at. So we're hoping to kind of break even on our cash, and we want our cash there. So that's with a conservative estimate on our sales. So that's pretty much the electric department. How much more detail do you want? I can talk and talk and talk about each line item or whatever, but I don't, unless y'all want to,
It
I
looks
don't.
good to me.
All right.
I can make one quick comment, but, and
All right.
I know you love my quick comment, but when Dud says that we're slaves of the weather, we are. We can't say in April we ran out of money to put your power back on. Just call us in July. But looking at the revenue expense sheet, out of $15.3 million for operating maintenance expense, what he forecast, where we actually are, we missed that by $371,000. 15.3, and we're within $371,000. You go down to water and sewer, 4.2 million forecast, 4.2 million actual. We missed that by $25,000. So when he forecasts operating and maintenance expense, we've got a history of hitting those things right on the head. Where we do have a problem is forecasting cost for TVA, because that depends on the weather. If we get nailed on demand and with no energy, then we'll be in trouble. But so you can feel good, I think, because of our track record. When we forecast, where we're conservative is on the revenue part. Where we really hit a good number is on our forecasting of expenses, and that is proven year after year after year.
Thank you. Moving on to water and sewer, we'll take the same look on the water and sewer. You know, it was a light year as far as the water sales, so we do expect them to pick up a little more. Generally, you don't have 2 light years on the water sales. We do expect them to pick up to the year before's levels and so forth. Our expenses always, you know, Dan's got less. He's got less leak detection going next year, but he's got more I&I, sewer I&I. So he's got to spend that money. You know, it has to be done. But with our grant next year, because of this state grant, we didn't get it, we're not gonna get it done this year, but it's gonna roll into next year. We're gonna have 386,000 capital contributions projected next year, which means we're in great shape for that bottom line we talked about, that net income keeping us positive for the state. You know, for this year, we've got some subdivisions and things, capital contributions, that's gonna keep us in the black. So we're gonna be green this year also. All that's good. So again, we'll take the same look on the money. You know, if you take what we forecast our balance to start the year, you add our net assets, you add back the depreciation, and there again, that $1 million, that's the number Greg's talking about, it's gonna hurt us one day. But for now, we'll add that back into cash, and we'll subtract out this 1.6 million. I will note that that's higher than what you saw last month, because what I did have to do was to put this carryover line, because these upgrades to the pump stations, you know, into that number that Dan had. So he didn't have that in there last month because it was already approved for the prior year. But I need to roll it into this budget to make the numbers work right. But
But that doesn't include the grant either.
but when you add these numbers together, and the 342 does include the grant, so then you take that out, then you come out to your cash is slightly down, but not a whole lot down. So the water department is in good shape too. And again, I'll talk as long as y'all want me to, but I know I'll bore you to death with it too. you know, so.
Questions? Comments? If, excuse me, if there are none, then we need a motion, and we need a second for the approval of next year's budget.
So moved.
Second.
Can I ask a quick question before we vote?
Sure.
I'm
Sure.
very impressed with what you all shown, but it always comes back to raises. So is there a percentage or a range or something that we are giving our employees this year? How does that?
That's what I was gonna hit,
3%,
Kinda like-
3%.
kinda like 10A.
Okay, that's just always comes up, so I just wanted to bring that up.
And of course, what we do at this particular time period, I believe that the range normally is, according to the information that I have been given, surveying our, I'm gonna call it, fellow utilities, those in the contiguous area, that's normally from 3 to 5%. Is this year's estimate that they have given to you all. The only thing, of course, obviously, that we set, and I'm rolling this into 10, then I'd put that kind of down to 10A, is that we normally set the general manager's salary. I personally feel like that Mr. Fay's done an excellent job, and so I feel like he should be at the high of the 5 end. I'd like any discussion on that, or I would like a motion for the approval of the budget, which would incorporate your recommendation for the percentage increase for our general manager. Any input on that?
What'd you just say?
I said I would like to have a recommendation to approve the budget, and my recommendation, and in effect, my motion then, as chair, would be approval of the budget and a 5% increase for the general manager. And obviously, I would need a second for that. And if it does not get a second, then I would obviously like to have input on what that, Mr. Fay's adjustment would be.
We did 5% last year, if I recall correctly. Is that right? Is that what we did?
Yes, ma'am, we
Okay.
did.
And that's not the 5% on top of 3%, that's 8%.
No, it is not.
No.
Okay.
No, sir, it would not be an 8% increase. It would be a 5% increase.
Flat rate, right?
Flat rate 5, Do I have a second, or what other discussion would we like to have in that regard?
Well, I think we previously, earlier in the year, we had a workshop, and some things were discussed, and I was comfortable with it at the time. I'm comfortable with it now. You know, I don't know going forward if you just have a carte blanche 5% year over year. I mean, we can look at that down the road, but based off the information that was presented to me in a workshop, I'm comfortable with making that motion to 5%.
I'll second that.
Okay, this is for the approval of the budget and for the rate / salary adjustment for the general manager of 5%. Any other input? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Like sign.
Thank you very much. I sincerely
on.
appreciate it.
Let's move on then to item number 11, which is the follow-up on residential development.
It's a good thing Charles not here because I've got all of his room taken up.
That's the big thing. Yes.
Go. This is all good here, and I'll get you a copy of this.
Be
It
careful,
is.
please be
Yes.
Well, I'll put it on our iPad.
It'll be on your iPad.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to follow up to some questions that Zach had, and this was at the meeting prior to last, that would put it at the April meeting.
That sounds right.
First, I thought it would be good because I want you to know globally what we are trying to do and how we conduct ourselves in what we do, the principles essentially that guide how we interact with our customers and the application of the policies and procedures that we have. We're into the principle of fairness. We do not discriminate in employment, in service, or in opportunity, and we uniformly apply all of our rules and standards. We do not subsidize one group over another, nor do we employ inequities with regard to an individual's economic, relational, political, or social standing. Now, do I have this here?
Yep.
I better turn it off and back on then.
Oh, you should have been working there.
I know, it's amazing, isn't it?
No working?
I got Zippo here. So, is that you?
Yeah.
Well, you're doing good. So the question,
Just give him
the question literally, quote, was how do we currently treat commercial and residential developers versus other utilities? And I'm going to slash out the commercial because everyone is treated uniquely by everybody because it's depending on what they want. It's a pad mount, it's an overhead. Are they going to pay for the transformer? You know, everyone also has a power contract. So those power contracts, they contract with us for how much power they're going to require. So it's a little bit different because everyone has to sign a power contract at every utility. Those stay the same, but each one is handled on a case-by-case basis. So I'm going to essentially go to this, if you'll.
It's all about being made whole.
Exactly. The bottom line, the issue is, and it reoccurs, is that we require the developer to pay all costs up front for the installed cost of electric facilities and utilities, as well as the installed cost for water and sewer mains that are built to CUB standards and specifications. And when they are, then we'll take them, accept them for ownership, and then we'll maintain them. We did a survey of these utilities, and they all require upfront for installed cost of electric, and they all require the water and sewer mains to be built to the specifications before they'll take them over for ownership. However, there are some variations to this, Dudley, if you'll hit it. These impact a developer whether or not they include the transformers in the cost of upfront money. And we're going to get to Miller Road, but to give you an idea is if you're going to charge them up front for the build-out, do you include the transformers for the lots and the houses or not? That makes a big difference. We, along with Rockwood, La Follette, and Sevier County, have identical policies concerning that. Johnson City, KUB, Lenore City, and Alcoa have a different strategy where they charge upfront for transformers, and that impacts by the next slide. I've done an example because Johnson City charges, as the others do, although they have some clawbacks, but they're the easiest to do a comparison with because they use cost per lot. So this is specifically based on the Miller Road development, and it used Cub's installed dollar amounts that was paid by the developer, Mr. Duncan. The reason that we can put these side by side is because Johnson City has a cost per lot formula that they charge the developer, and every other utility on that list would have had to engineer that so we could get a apples and apples. So this is the only one we can really get an apples and apples without having them engineer that, which they wouldn't do. So they include transformers, we do not. Our upfront cost to the developer was $8,100. That represented 18 lots without it, according to our policy, because we do not charge for transformers, and that would be paid to the developer. Now, what does that mean? And should we charge upfront for the transformers? We don't believe that we should, because if someone has 18 lot subdivision and they only build out 14 of them, then why should they pay for transformers on the lots that are not built out? Didn't cost us anything, shouldn't cost them anything. That's our philosophy. Now, the next slide shows that if they built this same Miller-type development in Johnson City, they would have charged him $19,800 because no matter what, every lot is $1,100. So you've got to pay $19,800 up front. And the next slide will be $11,700 more is what Mr. Duncan would have paid had he lived in Johnson City, or 144% over what he pays here. The next slide. Bottom line, every utility protects their ratepayers because they do not speculate on investments or improvements in private property by charging the developer upfront dollars. Everyone does that so we don't make a speculative investment into private property. A 20-acre field with 20 acres of saleable lots is different than just having a blank field out there. The field behind my house, beautiful out there. If he sectionalized that for lots and it had public water and sewer and electric on it, he would certainly be able to sell that as saleable lots for a lot more money than a 20-acre blank field. That's why the city charges for the roads, and the roads have to be built to their specifications before the city will take them over. Next slide. Is there a question on any of that?
Nope.
The next question was there any disparate treatment between the old Ironwood development proposal from several years back on Charles Severs and the current development on Miller Road? So we've pulled this off, and down here in the orange, you'll see what's called the Irwin property. That's the Miller Road project that we're talking about. And then the B&B properties is in blue. That's the Ironwood. And then right to the right of that is Anderson County High School, so you know where we're talking about. Now, the B&B properties was discussed years ago to house the insurance for the Ironwoods, and you see that building in Oak Ridge is where they are now. That would have been handled on a case-by-case basis because it's commercial for electric, and the pad transformer of what it would be, well, I mean, we would discuss all of that. That would have had a power contract with it.
Gotcha.
Now, both of these properties, all three of these lots, are outside of the city. So it would be handled differently for water and sewer because that's ACUB. I mean, that's ACWA. For the residential,
Messed you up on that.
residential property of the 18 lots, we already talked about how we would engineer that and what he would have to pay up front. But the next slide, ACWA service area for public and water sewer is all of Anderson County except city limits of Oak Ridge, city limits of Clinton, city limits of Norris, Oliver Springs, and Rocky Top, and parts of Claxton that we took over. And occasionally, ACWA has referred potential customers to us when they are adjacent to the Clinton city limits. Serving them is not operationally or financially practical like Hunter's Trail. For the rub for Mr. Duncan, I think, is he would have liked to have come into Clinton's water and sewer system, but he didn't want to be annexed into the city. So it's a two-edged sword. If the city would annex him, then we would work with him on how he could come into our system. But right now, him being in Anderson County, we can't develop that with our system unless ACWA asked us to. And they have found a way to get to ACWA's system that eventually pumps into us, so we're servicing.
Can you talk about and explain, and it was helpful for me when you did this, talking about explaining how they tap into the
Yes.
sewer and about the straw and
Yes.
Could you explain that?
We've got a force main that services all of that area up there, everything north of the county that's now not going through ACWA's force main. That's all coming down 61 here.
Under pressure.
Under pressure. Now, what we do is at certain spots, because water can go up a hill and down. You know, not far it loses pressure, but wastewater cannot. If you get to a place where you have to raise the elevation, you've got to pump it. So that's where the $400,000 at Miller Road, that's one of the pump stations. And we pump that thing all the way to South Clinton. So what you want is you only have certain areas where you can gravity into that, and you gravity into that pump station, and then as it fills, it pumps it out. To come further downstream, under pressure, and you punch a hole in that to serve 4 or 5 houses or whatever, the pressure that's coming down, especially when it rains, it could actually come up, not only stop you from pumping into it, but it looks like the least resisted avenue to pump that wastewater back up to them, and you'd have stuff coming up like this. So we want them, if we are to serve them, if it was in the city, we say, you've got to come to one of these collection areas, which in that case would have been Miller Road. Across the street, you've got to get to it. The Seventh-day Adventist Church, or Latter-day Saints, or whatever that is, they did that. They come under the road and they got to Miller because they wanted public sewer. So that's what Mr. Duncan would have had to do, which he didn't want to do.
Do we partner with Anderson County Water to make sure that they're, because it would seem to me like if they went rogue and started allowing people to tap into things, it could affect us, could it not?
If they
Does that make sense?
Well, let me put it this way. They pump to us and we meter that. So everything that they collect up there that comes through that force main, we meter that. So however it gets to them, we'll just meter what they send to us. Now this Miller Road, Mr. Duncan's 18-lot subdivision, that's going to pump into ACWA. and eventually that'll pump into us. Because of the new force main that ACWA built, that has relieved some of the pressure on the flow on this force main. So we can accommodate 18 more houses, we can accommodate more than that, but we don't have a problem with that yet. But if what they have done in the past is they've literally had manholes in a creek, and the creek, as the creek grows, it would just go in the manhole, and then we would get killed with all of that runoff, rainwater. So we've told them we can't handle their I&I. You know, I mean, they have to do and work, and they have done that.
Inflow and infiltration.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. So, not only do we treat everybody fairly, I think we can show that a lot of our practices are less than what our neighbors are, and for good reason. But that word doesn't get out. We were hijacked, Ernie was recently trying to work with the county. The mayor, county mayor, has been very helpful. But for an example, when people build things out in the county and do plats like this subdivision, historically they've always come through Cub, so we could identify our right-of-way for our overhead distribution system. And we're trying to serve, which means we've got to have right-of-way in order to get our equipment to service those things. Well, part of this new group has stopped bringing those, requiring plats to get signed off by Cub. So if, depending on where they are, the city works with us, this is in the county. So we told the county that that's really not good for the end-use customer, because if they get into a subdivision and we have no right-of-way, we can't serve them.
Right.
We can't serve them. So it's to the end user that you need to allow us to help when the plats go in to put our right-of-way in for overhead. Well, it elevated to the county mayor, and then we got a meeting with the planning commission down there, and while in the invitation for us to go, and Ernie and Todd went to help them with a white paper, the reasons why we need to be included in that loop on the plat, they called, Mr. Duncan was one of them, they called individuals that have personal gripes, and it became a real hit session. I mean, and as when Ernie left, Mr. Crowley himself, and I love to name names, indicated what we understand is, isn't that the most arrogant man you've ever seen? I mean, he was talking about Ernie. Yeah. So you can see where some developers would have a negative about Cub, because we don't accommodate them because they push themselves on some of these other. They don't get that accommodation here. If they want a pole move that's already there, then they have to do it on their nickel if it makes no sense for us. And for other utilities, they get apparently a lot of accommodation through the county. I don't know for a fact, but they don't get that here. And since they don't get that special treatment, they look to us, well, why don't you do it? And then they these unbelievable statements about what other utilities are doing. Ernie asked Mr. Duncan to come in, and then he didn't come, and Ernie sent him a letter, and then he finally did, and spent a long time with him to try to show him the advantages of what we do here. And apparently, they're unless they get special treatment, then they're unhappy. So we don't give them that special treatment.
Well, I mean, it would be fair to say, Greg, if these other utilities are doing that, they're going against their own state policies.
Absolutely. But the politics of it, especially in the counties or districts, we've seen ACWA bury a water main, allow one of their board members to put 30 feet of dirt on top of their main, which we would never allow, because you can't, there's nothing you can do. Can't dig down to get to it, so we would have to have them relocate that up. But they do that because of the politics associated with it. We don't do it, and therefore, for those specific people that are used to getting that kind of accommodation, we're not gonna get a good reputation.
And this will be, I mean, the board's comfortable with me taking this back to city council and basically
Absolutely.
regurgitating sort of what we talked about.
Yeah.
Because I feel this
I sure am.
very much answers the questions. I feel very, very comfortable with what we've said, and I'm very proud of our position.
Yeah, and then you get down to, Zach, this is policies, but when you get down to the real cost, you know, we looked at some tap fees. We charge $450 for a tap fee. Harriman charges $1,000. KUB charges $800. Oliver Springs charges $1,200. Norris is $550. Rocky Top $950. Rockwood's $1,155. Gatlinburg's $2,000. Pigeon Forge is $1,500. ACWA is $940. Hallsdale's $950. West Knox is $850. First Utility is $850. We're at $450. So when you say, well, how do we stack up in rates? We're killing them in rates. We see that. But how do we stack up in other fees and services that we provide? $450. So yes, we are tremendously advantaging
Accommodating.
Well, if it pleases the board, and then I plan on this month really having a robust report,
Sure.
and I'm going to take the floor and really tell the story of what we're doing.
We appreciate that because it's a good story.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions in regard to item number 11? All right, let's move on to item number 12, which is our Pension Plan Investment Committee, and as far as if we would like to have board representation on that committee.
I appreciate the board giving me an opportunity to comment on that. My comment is, I would be very pleased to have the board be the committee, you know, if they wanted to do that. What the board has done for us is they've designed and set, of course, Bob has helped them do that, an investment policy. So we have to follow, and Bob Cross and his group has to follow the improved investment policy and guidelines that is set by the board. So that's essentially what we do. That doesn't change. But we literally have to meet periodically when there are changes within the investments that will fall under, any movement falls under what the guidelines that are already set and approved by the board. You need to get that a little bit bigger, Dud, if you can. I mean, we can see it, but you know, trying to get closer.
Yeah, you can see who's moving.
It's on their iPads too, let me say that.
Yeah,
It's
well,
on
I mean,
their
I don't
iPad.
want them like this.
You're out a little bit.
So these are the guidelines that have already been set by the board, and we are enthusiastically support just given that. Right now, the board has set the manager, the assistant manager, and the director of accounting and finance to serve on that committee.
That's right.
And where I would be on that, I have absolutely no desire to be on that committee at all.
Right there, we got the three of us, general manager, assistant general manager, director of accounting and finance. And Greg is the chairman. And those are what we decided in December 2015. We meet quarterly and talk with Bob, and they make recommended changes. And if they recommend it and it makes sense to us, we pretty much go with it. But none of us proclaim to be experts at this. But we do the best we can we kind of follow Bob's guidelines because he is the expert and he's giving us a good return, we feel like, so. But, I mean, we can give you that detailed information anytime you want it, or as Greg said, we'll change it. It's up to you.
You know, I brought this up, I think, and the reason I brought it up was just out of a concern from our fiduciary standpoint to make sure that, is this something that we should protect you, honestly? I mean,
Right.
should we have more involvement to shield our employees from any sort of claims down the road, unforeseeable? I think probably what would work is whenever you guys meet with our investment managers, just include it in the board, include it in the minutes, the next, just say we've met with them, this was a recommendation, and then I would say have the board sign off on it, like by motion. We adopt it, we approve it, and I think that gives you guys
Yeah,
some cover,
cool.
in the event that if doomsday happened or something, you're not out there on your own, and it's been approved by the board. And I don't know how the board
think
feels
it's-
about it, but
I personally feel like that's an excellent
I do too.
suggestion.
and that way we don't have to be there quarterly. They're doing a good job already, but we sort of approve. Yes, we approve. Make a motion. Second, all in favor, aye. And then that way they have, I think, proper, cover, if you will. Does that sound
I think that-
agreeable to you?
Oh, I think it's a great idea.
Sounds marvelous to me.
Okay.
I think it's
Now,
an
my
improvement.
question-
It's an improvement.
My question would be, we got 3 here now.
We can table
Should-
that to next.
Should we
next-
take, I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
just,
should
we
we
just
table that till
We
the
just
next
table that to
meeting?
next meeting, just put it on the agenda as something.
Well, what we can do, we'll just do it. I mean, we'll come back and I'll put a line item on the agenda
Please.
and we'll just do it. You don't have to direct us to do it. We
Yeah,
will do
right.
it.
There you go.
Yeah, we'll do it. I think and I appreciate that because you're exactly right. It does protect us. And it also continues to inform you, which
I was
is
gonna
good.
say, it just keeps us more up to date on a 4-time versus annual frequency.
Well, you missed it, Greg, but
Oh, I heard about it.
he held up. I mean,
Oh.
he probably wasn't ready to, but he did real good, and I was very pleased with where we were, and couldn't have been more happier, and everything he said made sense to me, and what my training has taught me. So
Well, not only that, I told my staff, in your defense, that you have been the recipient of years of bad information. And this is an area where you're comfortable in, and you need to satisfy yourself. These are questions that have been lurking, and they need a positive response. So you, in order to satisfy yourself, you had to drill down, to do that. But Bob has been with us for many, many years, and he has been a tremendous asset. We've saved a lot of money, used to be with Aetna, and we saved, I don't know, a ton load of money by going through the process that we did. And he's been working really well with us, and they always are extremely accommodating. But I think you especially needed to have that time to offset the years of what you heard, which is incorrect information.
right.
So, Mr. Chairman, I've got other business if you.
13, those are business. I'm there with you.
Because I'm very proud, and I'm going to save this, I'm going to leave this out here so our other board members can see this. But this is a safety award that's presented by the national organization, the American Public Power. This is a safety award for excellence for safe operating practices in 2017. We just received this, by the way. And the utility earned third place in the category for utilities with 110,000 to 249,999 work hours of annual worker exposure. More than 300 utilities entered the annual safety awards, which is the highest number of entrants in the history of the program, by the way. And entrants were placed in categories according to the number of work hours and ranked based on the most incident-free records during 2017. The incident rate used to judge entries is based on the number of work-related reportable injuries or illnesses and the number of worker hours during the 2017 as defined by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. So we came in third out of that, and we are very proud of our safety record. We're proud of the program that we have. The end result is we have a documented safe working environment, but our people have gone through 2017 with an exceptional record, and we're very proud of that. So I wanted to share that with you, and I think it speaks to our commitment to safety in our organization. So that's all I have.
Okay. Are there any comments from you, Mr. Farah?
No, sir.
I have to share a funny story to end with. We had our 2 grandchildren this past week, and we were going down Charles Severs towards Mariner Point, and the 6-year-old in the back seat said, "Nana, what are those orange things up on top of that pole?" So I got to share with him the bird story.
That's good.
Hey, all right.
Don't park is what that
Don't
says.
park, don't park.
Well, I'm glad you knew.
I have
Yeah.
shared that with a 7-year-old as well.
Yeah.
So,
But seriously, I'm very, very impressed with what everybody's doing. It's an honor to be part of this board when there's so many great, wonderful things coming. And this team around, the CUB team around the table is the one that leads the parade. So thank you for all you all are doing.
Thank you.
I have nothing, and in view of that, we are adjourned.
All right.